commands for running the image. One with the high minus IT and minus P, and one only with the port number. So
so these are the images.
yeah.
Okay. So one with IT command, and then yeah. So this is one command, and this is the other command. Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah, so for the first command, like in the interactive mode and along with the exposing the port,
Mhm.
there if I just enter into the container and if I try to post my port number 4343, I'm not able to see the content there.
So you're actually, so in this case, like you're actually pulling this image. So
Yeah.
this means like you're actually fetching the image from the content from the Docker Hub. So then you're doing like Docker run minus IT minus P. So this is like interactive mode, and then you are getting inside this container like
Yeah.
4343 and then 80, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, like you're saying, like you're not able to run this
Yeah.
image, right? You're not able to browse this application.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Let
Only
me.
if I run the below command without an interactive mode, then I'm able to see the
Uh,
page.
Let me quickly check that.
Now, when we are assigning port number to this container, Anna, we are
Mhm.
unable to access through the browser. Anna.
Mhm. So whenever you are running it in the interactive
Hmm.
mode,
Yes, Anna.
no, that shouldn't be the case. Let me check that. Okay. Okay, so this is one you are actually running, right? 4.3. Okay, I understand the reason behind this. Okay.
Same thing I'm getting, Anna.
Yeah, yeah. So I understand the reason. So we are actually okay. Yeah. So the reason behind this is, so there is something called as like entry point. Okay, so in Docker, in this case, like if you see the entry point is something like we change the entry point. Okay, so whenever like when we are running this particular container, so we change the entry point from this thing. So I'll just show another thing. Okay, show you the difference. So when you do this, like so it is actually running, right?
Yeah.
I'll show you the difference. Okay. So now let's execute. So what I'm actually doing, so we in this PowerShell window, so we are running it in the interactive mode, and we were using like WinBash, right?
Yes, Anna.
So in this third thing, like we were not actually using like interactive mode, and simply like we are running it in the Docker mode. We are simply issuing the run command. Okay. So these are the two versions like which we are running, like which Preeti actually tried. So now let's execute like Docker PS. Okay. Mm, So in this case, like, so we were not able to see this Docker command. What Docker PS the full command. Just give me a second, like I'll do a quick Google. Uh, So this is the option like no truncate. Okay, so in this case, if you see, so this is the second case, like this is the second one which I executed, okay, without the interactive mode. So whereas like so this is the case in which like we are running in the interactive mode, right?
Yes, son.
You follow that, right? So
Mm.
if you see the command, like so here, like when we do docker ps, so it is just displaying only a small piece of the command, like so it is truncating. Okay, so if I issue this command like no trunk, okay, so it is showing the full command. Okay, now if you see, so in the case like where we didn't actually execute using the run, yeah, execute without the interactive mode. So what is this entry point dot sh executing? So it is executing like nginx. Okay, so it is executing this nginx command on the container. Okay, whereas like when we are actually running it in the interactive mode, so we are executing like bin bash.
Yes, son.
Okay. So that is the difference. Like, so that is the reason why like it is actually executing bin bash. So this second command, like, so when we are running it in the interactive mode using like -it and then bin bash, so we are not really starting the nginx container. We are
Okay.
not actually starting the nginx software. Okay. So we are starting like bin bash. So we are overwriting the entry point and saying that like instead of nginx, the default entry point for this particular container is nginx. Okay. If you issue the run command. So whenever like you do, so the Docker has an entry point. Okay. So what this entry point does is like, so the entry point, like whenever the container starts, it executes like, so it executes like whatever the commands that we provide in the entry point. Okay.
Okay.
So by default, like in the Docker file of this Nginx server, so the entry point is nothing but like Nginx. So they are executing like Nginx command. So
Okay.
we are actually overwriting that particular entry point. Okay. So and we are actually specifying it to execute bin bash in this scenario. Okay. So if you see in the second case, like we are not actually executing, we are not starting the Nginx container. We are starting like bin bash. So now if I do something like this, okay. If I do nginx, okay. Ng, okay.
INX.
Okay, so now, so pretty like we are inside this container. Okay, now if you execute this 43, whatever the command like 4343, so you'll be able to see this. Okay.
Yes, son.
Yeah. So Priti, did you understand the difference?
Yeah, yes, I understand.
Yeah. So that is the problem. Like, so what is happening? So since we are actually in the -it, since we are actually providing this engine bin bash, so it is actually starting like bin bash, not the nginx con. Okay. So when you are
Okay.
specifying like run command directly without any interactive mode and then without overwriting this entry point. So in this case, like the default entry point is nginx.
Okay.
Okay, so that is the issue. Like that is the reason why like you are facing that issue.
This issue with the interactive command, right? Yeah.
So this is not an issue actually. So
Mm.
whenever like you are interacting with the container, so you are actually specifying a specific like entry point. Okay. So since
Okay.
what does it mean to interact with the container? So we can interact with the container like Ubuntu machines using shell, right?
Yes, son.
So obviously like we are overwriting this particular thing. Like so the entry point from Nginx to WinBash.
Okay.
So we are entering into the shell other than the Nginx control. So that is
Yeah. So I'll also show you something. So if you specify something like this -it, 4 to, let's change it. Okay, so the difference is previously, like when we are interacting, so we said like bin bash. Now I'm saying nginx. Okay.
It will start automatic.
Yeah. Okay, so there is some issue, I feel. Talk. Okay, so what happened? Like, so it actually started and then it stopped, I believe, like, so built by talk. So this got exited immediately, right? So in this case, like what is happening is, so you're actually specifying like, so just nginx, right? Let's do one thing. Okay. So in this case, like again, if you see like 4242, right? So you can again see this, okay? And the command like which I gave is this one. So whatever the entry point command, like, so I'm just trying to simulate this. So when you just gave only this nginx, so what happened is, so it started and then it stopped. Okay. But in this case, like daemon G, so I think like it will run it for forever or something like that. I'm not really sure about this command exactly, but we can actually do a collective research on it. Like, so what this part is actually doing like in the nginx. Okay. Since this is not like an Nginx class, like we can just ignore, but we can do an offline research on this.
Okay.
So Preeti, is it clear now?
Yeah, clear. Thank you.
Okay. Let me clean up all these containers. So that is with the entry point. Like, so entry point again plays a crucial role. So others, like any questions?
Only I have that port issue now. It's clear now.
Okay, so the same issue like that Preeti has.
Yes, yes.
Clearing or deleting all the containers, running containers. Okay. So this way, like you can actually share your images to your friends. Okay, so all the changes like which you make in your image, like you can share it to them. Okay, so Naidu, like you're asking about the volume part, right? So let's again like let me show you that. So in the second session, like Naidu, like when we are actually planning to change a particular HTML file, okay. So let me get inside this HTTPD container. running like this. Naidu, so you're listening, right? So I'm starting this HTTPD container on port number 80.
Okay.
Okay. So this should ideally start this container. I'll just execute this. Okay, so I'm getting this message like it works. Okay, now I decided to edit the content of this file. Okay, so content of the default file which is getting served. Okay, so this is some file like which is actually getting served, right? So what I need to do, so I need to get inside this container. So this is my container which is running docker exec minus IT. So container ID /bin/bash. So cd ht docs index.html nano index.html. I'm not able to execute this nano command because like since this is like in basic Ubuntu version, so we'll not have this nano installed. So first of all, like I need to install nano.
Update.
Yeah. Get install nano. So now I can actually edit this index.html. So this is the message which we are getting, like this is the page HTML page which is actually getting served. Okay. Okay. So it is actually working, right? So in order to make a change, like what I need to do, so I need to get inside this container and then so I need to install nano or whatever the file editor software. And then so finally, like I edited this HTML and I made this change. So what I'll do, I'll exit out of this and then I'll do docker ps. So this is actually running, right? So what I'll do is like, so I'll stop this container. Okay. Docker stop. This is the container. Okay, so I stop this container, right? I'll remove this Docker container, Docker rm-f, and then I'm removing this container. So, okay, so now again, I want this to be, I want to run another HTTP container with this same content. Okay, it works edited. Okay, so what should we do now? So Naidu, like, what should we do now?
We can this container we can push to Docker Hub no? With image Docker image.
So one
Then we
option
pull
is like,
that.
so you'll create like a container out of this image. I
Hmm.
mean, so you'll create an image out of this container. And then so you'll make use of this container. So that is one way. Like,
Okay.
but I'm unfortunately like that is not the thing like which we follow on a regular basis. So, but now if I wanted to do again, like I'll start this container. So again, like if I run this thing, okay. So Docker run -p -httpd. So again, like if I'm running this container, so I need to repeat all these steps. So I need to get inside this container, install nano, and then modify that file, HTML file.
Yes.
Right. So which is a tedious job. So since it is just assume like this HTML file is the default code which you work day in and day out. Okay, so every time like you cannot actually get inside the container or you cannot actually edit all the file, right? So this is not the right place to edit. Like so you cannot make HTML related changes in the PowerShell window, right?
Yes, sir.
We'll create a separate file, HTML file and separate folder.
Yeah, exactly. So that is where like, so this comes into picture, like, okay. So the volumes and then the copy option comes into picture. Okay, so what I'll try to do is, so I have this my HTML, right? Okay, so I just wanted to have this content. Let's assume that I want to have this content, display this content, copy this content. So what I can actually do, so I can do one thing, like I can copy the content of this particular HTML file, all this content, and then I can get inside the container, install Nano, and then replace the file content, HTML file content with this text. Okay, but this is not the ideal option. So this is not at an option to consider. Okay. So in that scenarios, like what we do is like, so let me get into this particular folder.
No, directory.
Okay, so now I'll start this container Docker run. So -p port number is 80. I'm exposing 80 port on my local to 80 port on the container. And then so I'll specify the volume. Okay. So in the volume, like on my host directly, dollar of PWD. So this PWD option actually changes. Like if you are using shell, you should use like another option, like so which specifies the current directory. It's percentage CD or something like that, I believe. Like, okay. So you should specify this dollar of PWD. It displays, it provides this. Okay. So
Directory.
yeah, current
Current
directory.
working directory.
Current directory. Yeah.
I work. Yes.
So this you are actually mapping to whatever which directory like we are mapping to. We are mapping this to this directory. So where we'll have all these documents, all these HTML files, at least in this scenario. So the same way, like you can map it to any directory like which you want. So I'm mapping it to this particular directory and I'll be executing like I'll be running a container out of this thing like HTTPD. So Docker run. So this is for port opening and then this is for the volumes.
We are giving image ID, right?
Yeah, so
HTTPD.
image name. Yeah. So now what is happening? So we have all this content that is copied onto, that is not copied, like that is referenced in the container. Okay. Now if you do like this thing 127.0 a.html. So you can see this, right? Same way, like if I want to do like bb.html, so I can do bb.html. Okay, so if I create like another file, okay. So cc.html, I created a file like cc.html. You can see this, right? So without actually getting inside this container, like you're able to make these changes in the code. All right.
Okay.
So that is the advantage of volume. Okay,
Yeah,
so
volume mounting, right?
hmm.
But if we use the copy command, then we won't see the changes in real time.
Exactly. Like, so if we actually do the copy command, like, so we don't actually see any of these changes. Like, so only when we execute that command, like, so whatever the file we are actually copying, only that file gets copied. So any real-time changes, they'll not reflect in the copy command. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's clear, right? Okay.
Yes.
So this is more about the CLI. So we covered like most of these options, and there are like few options which we'll be seeing. Like, so we covered like Docker difference content. So these are like this is to show like what are all the ports that are being exposed. Logs is just for seeing like any logs in the container. Okay. So this gives these they provide like some stats. So this is to this Docker top. So this will give you all the processes that are running inside this container. So for example, So we'll execute each of this command. So Docker logs, we already saw that, like, so Docker logs container name. So you'll see all the logs. So over here, like, okay. And similarly, like with others, like Docker stats. So this is just to show like different statistics, like, so what is the network length and how much memory it is actually occupying and all this information. Okay. So it is using just like 40 MB out of like my 16 GB machine. And then the top, top. So these are all the different processes which are actually running, like, so under root, like we are actually running like HTTPD. So there are like multiple processes which are running, like these are all like Ubuntu related processes, like just like in our Windows, like we have taskbar processes, right? So task manager process, the same way, like these are like Ubuntu processes. So when we are actually learning Docker, so it's also better to learn some of these commands from the Ubuntu. Like, okay, so we'll get some idea, because like Docker and Ubuntu, they go hand in hand, like most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good to have like some Ubuntu knowledge, like Docker inspect.
Okay.
So Docker inspect, what it does is like, so it will give you like different details, like, so related to this container. So what is the state of this container? So this gives you like detailed information of this particular container, okay, which image it is actually trying to running. And then, so if there are any bindings, like, so for example, like, so my path, like, so depersonal, like, so binding is nothing but like the volume, we mounted this volume, right? So this is actually pointing to this particular thing. Okay, and it gives like all the information, like what are all the ports that are open.
This is a JSON file or a YAML file?
No, this is the JSON file. Okay, so this
Okay.
is the JSON output. So you'll also see like the Docker network configuration for that particular Docker, like what's the IP address, like host IP address, and then
Okay.
what is the Docker machine IP address, of the Docker container. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we go deep into the Docker networking and all that stuff, like, so that is when like all this information, it comes handy.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Docker port, whatever the port, like, so we are actually exposing. So I'm exposing like 80 port, right? Onto 80 port on my host machine. This is some of the information like related to informations and then the statistics. So we saw all these things, like, and if someone is actually planning to like save this content of this particular image into an tar file or zip file, so they can use this command like docker save so and so file, like, so I'll just show you. Docker, docker save my image name is httpd, and I want to save it as, before that, like, I'll go inside this content. So it will save this image as an tar file. Okay. So it is actually creating the file. No,
I,
so
I have
so
I have a doubt on.
yeah, tell me.
When we create image, when we save it any image with an extension, it will save no, or only tar or
I think like tar and zip files are actually supported. So the
mm,
archiver is either in an unknown format or damaged. So we can also try zip. In the same way, like if you have like any tar file or zip file, like you can actually load it from that particular file using this load option.
okay.
Okay, so I think like we covered most of this commands. Okay, so yeah, if we miss anything, like you can just let me know. But these are the most commands, like most commonly used commands related to the Docker CLI. Okay.
Docker build directory. What is that command?
Where did we see that? Okay, Docker build Docker. This one, right? Yeah, I'll
Yes.
show it to you. Okay. So this is to build an image from the Docker file. Today's session, like we'll cover that.
Okay.
So this is a zip file. So this is interesting. So I'll see like why this is not actually working, like either with the tar file or the zip file. Might be some issue. Okay. Yeah, but this is how like we can actually save our image into a tar file or as tar file. Okay, so and then we can load the content back from the tar file. So these commands like we don't regularly use, like so we don't use them often. Okay. So and any so these are all related to the CLI commands. Like any questions till now, like with the CLI? So you understood the overall concept, right? What the Docker container is actually, and then how they run in the isolation mode, and how do we actually make changes inside a container? How do we persist a container back to an image or something like that? So you understood these concepts, right?
Yes, son.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the basic, like so if we understand these container basics, so then only like we can proceed with further concepts like either with Docker Compose or Kubernetes or whatever it is. So this is like ABCDs. This is like alphabets.
Okay.
Okay. So hope you are all clear with this. So if you have any questions, like let me know now itself. Now let's see another thing like Docker file. Like okay, so Sandhya was asking this question like, so what is this Docker build command? Okay, we'll see that option. So till now, like what we are actually doing is, so we are actually pulling an existing image. Okay, so you are just pulling this existing image from the Docker Hub, and then based on that particular image, like either like you are getting into this container, creating an image container out of that image, and then making changes inside the container. So that is what like we are actually doing till now. Okay, so we didn't actually create an image out of our own. Like so we created an image, but we in that scenario, like what we did, like we saved an existing running container as an image, but we didn't actually build an image from the scratch, right? So now we'll see like how to build an image from the scratch. Like this is the most important thing because like we 90% of the time like we build images like in our work environment. Okay, so this is very crucial. So this is where like Docker file actually comes into picture. What is this Docker file actually? So the Docker file is nothing but like it's just like a text file or a notepad file, something like that. Okay, where like you'll provide a series of instructions. So these instructions, like when you actually read, with the help of like Notepad. So it doesn't make any sense. Like, so these are like, so some plain commands like which you are actually seeing, like, so you're seeing like 3 lines of code. But what Docker does is like, so it interprets each of these lines and each of this command, and then so it tries to build an image out of this particular file. Okay. So when this is a simple Docker file. Okay. So here what I'm actually doing is, so I'm just creating like, I'm just pulling like an Ubuntu image. Okay. So Ubuntu latest image. And in that particular image, so I'm creating like a directory, like with the run command, like I'm creating, this is again like Ubuntu command, like mk directory, make mkdir is like make directory. So I'm creating this command like this folder name. After that, like I'm executing this command, like, so whenever like we are actually running this container, so we are executing this particular command out of this. Okay, so now let's execute this particular command. Okay, you see, you understand this, right? The from, this is every Docker file, it requires this thing like from. So you need to take some base image. So it can be like an Ubuntu, or it can be like Windows Server container, or you can also take like any existing container. So Nginx container or whatever it is. So, but it is mandatory to have like a base image. Okay, so and after that, like you'll be providing like series of commands inside this. So now let's actually make a container out of this particular image. Okay, make an image out of this Docker file. So this is a simple 3-line command. So this is the command like Docker build. So you need to specify like the path. So if it is like, since I'm in the current directory, so I need to specify dot docker build dot. So when you specify dot, what this Docker file actually does, what the Docker is doing behind the scenes is, so Docker engine. So it is checking like in the current directory, do I have any file with the name like Docker file? So this is the file name we are supposed to follow. Like, so there are no alternatives. So you cannot have like your own file name and then so specify that like, okay. So you should always follow this Docker file, this file name convention. Okay, and you should not have like any extension to this particular file. Okay, so it should be like extensionless. So it shouldn't be like .txt file or something like that. So how do you save this? Like, I'll just show it to you. So whenever like you're saving, like you can do save as, and then so specify Docker file. So just provide like this file options, this double quotes. Okay, so when you click on save, so it will not have like any extension. So that is how, like, so the Docker engine, whenever like you specify Docker build dot, so it is actually looking for the Docker file in the current directory, like in this directory. Okay. And then you can specify the tag name, image name. So I want to create an image, something like this, PRYAX. As Docker Ubuntu basic. Also, you can specify the version number. I'll specify like 1.0. No. So you can see this is the command like which I'm issuing, like Docker build -t. And then so -t, this is nothing but like to tag your container. Like I'm just providing like Docker. This is the name of this container and this is the version number. The dot specifies like look for the Docker file in the current directory. Okay, so it is actually building this image. So now if you see, so this has like, you'll see like multiple options, 1 by 2, 2 by 2 kind of things. Okay, So what is this 1/2 and 2/2? So if you see this particular file, so we have these commands, right? So this is the first command which is present, and then so this is the first command like from Docker. So from Docker, so it is actually picking like the Ubuntu image, okay, from the Docker hub. And after that, like it is actually executing this command, like run command, run make directory when creating this image. Okay, so now let's see like Docker images. So you can see this is the image, right? Okay, I'll run this command, run this image, Docker run. Sorry, I should actually provide like the content in image ID. So you can see this. I'm printing like Docker is awesome. So and so command like, OK. So why did I get this message? Because I'm just specifying like execute this command like, OK. So any commands we'll see like all this syntaxes like in shortly like. So but this is a Docker file and this is how like it works. So Docker PS if I do, so I'll not have like any this container is not running in the background. That is because so I just specified like echo this particular message and then after echoing like it doesn't have like any work to do, right? It exits automatically. Okay, Docker PS -a. And this is the message like you can see what is this option like node trunk, right?
Yes, Pavan, not wrong.
Trunk. So you can see like the command which got executed bin slash like bin sh and then I'm executing this command like echo docker is awesome. So when this container is actually starting, so what is this command? This command actually specifies what are all the commands that are executing when the container starts. OK. So when this command is starting, when this container is starting, this is the command that got executed. And how did it know? So because this is the command like which tells Docker to execute this echo all this thing like when the container starts. OK. So from this like we can understand that like whenever like we are running this Nginx container like without interactive mode and bin bash. So at that time like we saw like there is something called as an entry point, right? Entry point and then it is executing Nginx. OK. So behind the scenes, like the Docker file might have like an entry point, so command or entry point kind of thing, and then there they are executing Nginx directly. So any questions with this, like, or is it a bit confusing?
Pavan,
Yeah.
can you tell me once again?
Okay. So where exactly like you have the question?
That echo docker is awesome command. Like
Is awesome. Awesome is a message.
that, no, here /bin/sh.
Yeah, I'll do that.
But
Okay. So Docker. I'm just removing all these images. Okay, so this is my Docker file. So is this clear like what the Docker file is actually? At least like you got like 1% of understanding, right? Like what a Docker file
Yes,
is.
Pavan.
So this is nothing but like the Docker file is mainly used for creating Docker images. Like it is used for building these Docker images. So a Docker file is nothing but like it has we need to initially like we need to specify what is the base image like we want to take. And on top of it, like, so what's the container? Like what are all the commands like we want to execute. Like, so in a way, like it is just you're specifying like Docker that like take the Ubuntu image, and after taking the Ubuntu image, create a directory with this name. And after creating the directory, okay, so the command, it just ignores it. Okay, at this point, like it says Docker, I mean, so the Docker engine. So whenever a container is starting out of this particular image, okay, execute this command, like, okay. So you understand. So let's say like I'm asking Sandhya. So Sandhya is my Docker engine and I'm just giving her Docker file. So we are talking in the plain English. So I'll say, Sandhya, you take an image from the Ubuntu. Okay, you take Ubuntu as a latest image. Okay, so after taking the latest image, Ubuntu image, so create a directory called as Pavan is awesome. Okay, and then like when someone is actually running this image, like, and creating a container out of this image, so the message like which you should display is, this is the message that is supposed to be displayed on startup. Okay, so these are the plain English commands like which I gave to Sandhya. Okay, so what Sandhya will do, so she will create a VM and she will install this Ubuntu OS, and then she'll also create a directory inside this particular OS. And whenever like someone is starting on the machine, like the laptop or something like that, so they'll show like welcome to sales or so and so message, kind of message, right? So that is what she is doing. So in this case, like we are doing the same thing, like we are instructing Docker engine to execute, like to create an image from the Ubuntu latest, and then create this directory, and then when on the startup, let me execute this command. Okay. So now I'll do Docker build. Docker build. So -t is for tagging. So Docker basic Ubuntu. Okay. So this is for the naming convention, and dot. Dot is nothing but like I'm saying like, so take the Docker file from the current directory. From this directory. So if we don't have a Docker file in this directory, it will throw an exception. So here, like what we can actually see is, so one out of two from Docker Ubuntu. So it is trying to execute, like it is trying to pull this particular image, the Docker image from the Ubuntu, and then it is executing this Pavan is awesome command. Okay. So now Docker images, if you see these Docker images, so I have this particular image. You're seeing this, right? So now if I run this particular image, Docker run. So when we run this particular image, what instruction did I give? So I asked the Docker engine to execute this command on startup. Okay. So when this container is started, so it is displaying this particular message. Okay. So the same image, like I'll do another thing like Docker run. I'll run it in the interactive mode. Docker run -it and -d. And then I'll say /bin/bash. Okay, sorry. What is the mistake that I did? So I executed this -d detached mode. So detached mode in the sense like it runs in the background. So I'm not supposed to give this detached mode. Docker run -it, and then this is my image name, and image ID I should provide, and then /bin/bash. Okay, so now, so previously, like when I did like Docker run, what happened? Like, so it executed this message, right? So now it is not, it is, so the same content image like I'm running like, but it is not executing this thing. Okay, so it is not displaying this message. So now let's see both of these, like Docker ps -a. I'll also give no trunk.
See.
What happened? No.
Minus A is
NC.
Hmm.
minus
Trunk
A
and
is
We'll
not
give
there.
NC.
Okay,
So-
trunk. Okay, trunk. Okay, so you can actually see the message like, okay. So with this container, I executed like I specified manually to start like bash, right? So I'm explicitly specifying the startup command as bin bash. Okay.
Binbash.
Whereas,
It won't start right, Anna. We are
yeah,
giving binbash.
yeah, bin bash, like we are starting like bin bash. But in this case, so when I'm doing like the run command like directly, so when I'm executing this run command, so in that at that time, like what is it doing? Like it is executing the command like which I provided in my
Yeah.
Docker file.
Okay.
Okay. So the same thing happened with the Nginx. So Preeti, like if you remember, the same thing happened with the Nginx also.
Okay.
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 So is it clear? Like, so you got a sense of what this Docker file is, right?
These are steps, right, Anna? What
Yeah,
we are
these are like
doing.
sequence of steps. So you can
Just-
have like multiple steps. So
Yes.
if you want, so for example, like I'll take another Docker file.
Yeah, we can write a code like apt get update, then
Yeah.
apt get install nano.
So I'll write another Docker file. Okay, I'll stop this content. Docker rm minus f dollar Docker ps minus a minus q. Okay. So if you remember, like so whenever like we are working on the HTTPD, okay, so we are actually having an issue. Like so we are supposed to install this nano and all this stuff, right? Okay. So let's try to skip that. Like, okay, so let's see like if we can actually automate the process of installing the nano software. No. So I'll take HTTPD image, HTTPD as the base image. And then so just ignore this creation of this working directory. Okay, I'll not touch this. And then so I want to execute. So I want to run apt get update. Want to run apt get install nano. Okay, so this previously like we were doing the same thing, right? I'll
Yes, sir.
just remove this command like. Docker images. So we don't have any images. So let me build this container. Docker build minus t. It's like HTTP with nano. Okay, HTTPD image with nano dot. No, sorry. So you can see this message like so it is actually looking for the Docker file in the current directory, but it's not able to find it. So I should actually get into this folder. Execute this Docker command. See, it is trying to pull this HTTPD container from the Docker registry. So you can see the latest version. That is, there are like 4 steps. 1, 2, 3, and then 4th step, right? So this is one out of the 4th step. So it is running the second step, like creating the directory on the image. So it is running apt update. So after that, like it is installing Nano. Okay, so it failed. Okay, so the reason why like it failed is okay. So it is, if you remember, like so when we are installing the Nano, so it is expecting you to answer this, like so whether like you want to proceed or not with yes, right?
Yes, son.
So in here also, like it is expecting us to answer this, like so what's the option, like so how to. Yeah, so by default, like it is expecting like user intervention, like so, but since we are not able to, this is like an automated fashion, like so we are not able to do that, right? So that is the reason why like it is actually failing. So let's say like I'll just do a quick Google since I'm not very good at like Ubuntu. Get install Nano automatic. Yes. So there is like no prompt, bypass the prompts. So that is the option. -y. So let's try with -y option. Default. So now if you see, so just also remember this point, like, okay, so Docker also caches all these steps, like, okay, so previously, like if you see, so it is actually downloading the HTTPD image and it is doing all this stuff, right? Now you'll see a different message over here. Okay, so you can see it directly went to this step, like 4 steps. So step 1, it is actually cached, and you can see like step 2, it is cached, and step 3, it is cached apt update. So previously for apt update itself, like it took like good amount of time, right? Now it is actually caching, like so that is one of the advantages with Docker. Like so every time like if you are building this image, so it doesn't actually like if you have like hundreds of steps in before this, like here, like. And let's say like you wanted to make some change in the 50th line or something like that. So it doesn't execute like all these 50 lines again, like, so it caches them. Okay, so the image got created. So this is the image. So Docker run httpd -p put 80 with 80. Okay, so the default like it got created, right? So it is running on 80. So 80 port it is running. But if I want to edit the file, like previously what I used to do, I used to get inside this container and I used to install Nano. Docker exec -it /bin/bash. So you're following, right?
Yes, son.
Yes, sir.
Let's go. Okay, so this is the content. Docker exec -it. Okay, so previously when I executed the Nano command, like I used to get an error, like, but now the Nano got installed, right? So that is where like, so how it got installed. So we took like the basic HTTPD image, the base HTTPD image. After that, like we installed these two commands, like, okay, in the Docker file itself, like. So now if I run this particular image, every time like it is not required to get inside the container and then edit any of this, install the Nano. Right. So that is the advantage with the Docker file. Like, so you'll specify all the steps. Like you can or take some base image and then using that base image, like you can actually create these files, like run your own steps.
Then
Okay. So we'll see more about this Docker file tomorrow. Like, so there are like multiple options. Like you can copy the files from your host machine into the Docker image when you're building the image itself. Like we'll see all those steps like tomorrow. For now, like we'll stop it. Like any questions like from your side?
No, Anna.
no,
Anything you want me to repeat?
No.
Okay. So I hope this is clear, like today's session. Okay.
yes, sir.
So you're following me, right? I just wanted to take the feedback. Like, so I'm not. So you're okay with my teaching style, right? Or any concerns or anything, like any suggestions, like you want, if you have any, please let me know. Like, so I'll stop
No.
the screen.
Yeah, I have a one